Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today we are getting into my top 10 horror books that I think are essential reading. These are the horror books you have to read before you die, the books that I would take to a deserted island, the books that I am never going to unhaul no matter what happens to me. And if you missed the thriller version of this video, I also have my top 10 thrillers you need to read before you die. I will link it up above and down below, but this is going to be the horror version. Y'all know that horror and thriller books are my bread and butter. It's what I love. So I have 10 essential horror recommendations for you today. And of course, as always, I'll have my bonus recs in the extended cut version of this video, which will be up on Patreon. It's up right now. It's linked down below. You can join my Patreon for just $3.99 a month, and you can literally cancel after the first month after you watch all the videos. That's the thing I feel like some people don't know is, yeah, they're all available once you sign up once. So cool. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my top 10. Starting out with Brother by Anya Allborn. This is the book that I will say when people ask me what my favorite horror book of all time is. It's Brother by Anya Allborn. I love this book. It is character-driven horror, has a lot of beautiful commentary about generational trauma and mental health, but of course it's juxtaposed against some amazing graphic slashing that's going on. It kind of takes the initial premise of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and asks the question, what if that inbred hick-ass family from Texas Chainsaw Massacre were to adopt a child from outside of the family? And that is who we're following in this book. Just a normal child who was kidnapped and brought into this family of cannibal serial killers. And he's questioning, what is his fate? Does he want to grow up and be just like his brother, mother, father, sister? Or is he destined for something else? It's kind of like the great nature versus nurture discussion, but in a slasher format. It's incredibly character driven. It's so immersive, and that ending is just heart-wrenching. I love everything about it. I read it in just a couple sittings because I was absolutely enamored with it. And then I got obsessed, hyper-fixated, and had to watch the movie that it was kind of loosely inspired by, which is, surprisingly enough, not Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a movie called Unchained, and it was really good, really interesting. So, of course, my number one horror book for this video, you gotta read it before you die, Brother. I also have a short story collection to recommend in this video, which I feel like is really rare. I've talked about this before, but it's really hard for me to give a short story collection 5 stars if not every single story is a 5-star story and can stand on its own. This is one of those rare collections that just did it for me. It has my weird brand of horror imbued with some great commentary, and that is They Were Here Before Us by Eric LaRocca. I absolutely love Eric LaRocca's work. They are a phenomenal kind of like trippy, weird horror author, and really I love everything they've ever written, but this is by far my favorite. If you like nature horror and kind of like exploring where does nature end and human experience begin, how are they intertwined, how do we impact the environment and the environment impacts us, those are the questions that are explored here in some really gross, really scary animal horror. The story about the chimpanzee will forever live in my brain. It deeply terrified me. So at the same time that it made me really think and consider my place in the world, it also really just scared me, and it was plain great horror. It's so short, it's so easy to read, but deeply unsettling. It's all the juxtapositions, which is what I love in a horror book. This one just captured it all. Next up, I have a rec from the very beginning of my channel. If you've been around for a while, you will remember my hyperfixation obsession with I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. I know that this is a pretty controversial book, but it's one that I really, really love. I love the trippy feeling that I got while I was reading this book. It's so uniquely written, and we're honestly just exploring a woman's mind, okay? This is about a woman's mind, or so we think at the beginning of the book. We're kind of in our main character's head as she is traveling in the passenger seat of her boyfriend's car, going to meet her boyfriend's family for the first time, and she's considering ending the relationship. But of course, the book goes off the rails as we dive deeper and deeper into her psyche. It becomes more about the relationship with the self than this couple driving in the car, considering their relationship. I love the journey and how the journey felt to get to the eventual meaning at the end of the book. The audiobook is phenomenal. There are so many unique elements of this story. Literally the only thing that I can think of that I don't like about this book is the movie adaptation. I thought it was absolutely horrible, and it kind of tried to turn this into like some trippy art house kind of thing, when really the experience of just reading the book was plain scary, and it was fast paced and like you were losing your breath. It was so terrifying. The movie version feels like the most boring thing you'll ever watch, and it made me burst out laughing, not because of uncomfortableness, because of cringe. So yeah, I don't feel like it accurately depicts what the book is. If you were discouraged from reading the book by the movie, really recommend that you give it another look. Next up, we have a classic here. I have my old beat up copy of Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This will be the only King novel on this list, so don't worry. I have mixed feelings about Stephen King, but I think we can all agree this is some of the finest grief horror ever written. If you don't know the premise of Pet Sematary, we are following a man who moves his family to a house alongside the highway. There is a lot of traffic that goes by their house, and unfortunately a lot of animals get hit by cars, so they have a pet cemetery in the back. Kind of a creepy concept. Obviously it's a horror book, but there's something interesting about this pet cemetery. If you bury pets there, they tend to come back a little bit weirder than they were when they were buried. It's basically the zombie pet apocalypse, and things go so wrong when you think about burying a person in the pet cemetery. The writing is phenomenal. This is another one that I highly recommend the audiobook. The version that I listened to was narrated by Michael C. Hall, who plays Dexter, and he did a phenomenal job reading the book and really acting it through. I felt the emotions of our main character as I was reading. There are a few scenes, like the scene where he's digging the grave, that just like live in my mind forever and feel like the most classic horror that we have. It's by far my favorite Stephen King book. I think it's the most digestible. If you're looking for a good place to start with Stephen King, I would start here. And really just in general, if you're looking for a place to start with horror, you should start with these 10. Next up, I actually want to talk about a YA horror book, which is quite different from me, but this one is such a standout, and it's actually inspired by another King novel, and that is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This book is absolutely perfect. I can critique nothing about it. It was flawless the entire way through. Takes the concept of Carrie, Stephen King's Carrie, and turns it into commentary on colorism, racism, and segregation. The main character of this book, her name is Maddie, and she is white passing. She is black, she's mixed actually, but she's white passing, and no one's ever questioned her whiteness her entire life, up until the point when she goes out in the rain and her hair starts to curl up and people realize that she is mixed. This is absolutely detrimental for her at school. She starts getting bullied. There's all this racism that she's dealing with, and at her school they're actually having a segregated prom. This does take place in present day, and it was actually inspired because just a few years ago there was a segregated prom in the United States. I know, it's If you're like me, it's hard to believe, it's hard to fathom, but yes, this is still happening. So we follow Maddie as she taps into the rage and divine feminine power that she possesses from everyone who levies hate at her, including her abusive father. It is an emotional story. It is a horrifying story. It is a story rife with amazing commentary. It takes the concept of Carrie, which is classic, timeless, and I already loved, and took it to another level with Tiffany D. Jackson's voice that I didn't know that I could love Carrie more than I did, and I do with The Weight of Blood. Next up we have my weird gay stuff. Okay, what's new? You win with your gay stuff. I love this book. This is probably my favorite queer horror book I've ever read, and I actually read it this year. This is a contender for my favorite of the year for sure. That is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. We're following a woman in this book who is newly discovering her sexuality. She's always dated men, but she just got out of a relationship with a man, and she notices this woman at the farmer's market, and she also notices that she's having feelings for her. Thus ensues her first relationship with a woman, which is going swimmingly. The descriptions of their relationship and their surroundings and the farmer's market, it just creates this really immersive atmosphere and vibe that is so pleasant to read about, but also slightly unsettling. It has that like horror undertone throughout, and then things absolutely pop off when our main character realizes this relationship is not all that it seems. It's a big allegory. There's lots of little pieces of meaning in there, but really at its heart, this is just a twisty, shocking, quick horror novella about womanhood, about girlhood, about queerness. It's everything to me. Highly, highly recommend. I promise you, you will love this book, especially if you like some gross shit, okay? If you like some graphic, some gross shit, this book pops the fuck off at the end. Actually, the reason why I picked up this book this year is because I got a comment on the video that I hauled this book in, and someone said, I gave that book 1 star. It's the most disgusting shit I've ever read. It's 5 stars. Needless to say. I'm obsessed. Next up, we have another novella. I'm just now realizing how many novellas are on my best of list. I feel like horror is best in little bites. It doesn't need to be drawn out. It doesn't need to be overwritten. Just give us the juice. And that definitely happens in this one, The Test by Sylvain Neuvel. This is basically exploring the horror, the real life horror of a citizenship test. It is a moral dilemma, and we follow some people taking a citizenship test as if it is life or death, which for some people in our world, in reality, it really is. So love the commentary there, but it also reads like the best sci-fi horror ever. It feels like an episode of Black Mirror. It goes so fast. It hits you with the twists that I love, the shocking moments, the emotional moments. It has it all wrapped into such a compact package. I don't know how this author fit everything that I love and need in a horror book in such a short little thing. I believe I read this in like an hour or something like that, maybe a couple hours. Like, it's very, very easy to read, and yet it's rife with so much in-depth commentary and meaning. I'm endlessly blown away by this book, and I feel like it's not recommended nearly enough. Next up, we have my favorite book from last year, and that was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. If you like some weird, trippy, generational trauma shit, this is for you. I literally have a signed first edition because I absolutely am obsessed with this book. Hello, I love it here. Also, just a side note, apologies for the weird lighting, weird sound. I'm filming this at a weird time of day, and I'm also doing laundry at the same time, so there's just a lot going on. Hopefully you can see me and you can hear me okay. As I'm editing, I might freak out and scrap this video. Hopefully that didn't happen. Hopefully you're actually watching me right now. Anyway, How to Sell a Haunted House is about a brother and sister duo who are estranged, but they have to reconnect over the sale of their parents' house after their parents tragically pass away. They are meeting up and going through everything that's left in the house so they can get ready to sell it and split their inheritance, which is the profit from the sale of the house. As they're going through the house, they stumble upon their mother's quirky doll and puppet collection, and they start to come to life a la Poltergeist. There are some weird haunted elements of this book. One thing you need to know about me is I hate haunted house books, okay? I don't like paranormal horror. I don't like ghosty books. I'm always bored with haunted house books. I wasn't bored for a singular page of this book because everything is darkly funny. Everything is a nod or a wink to, if you're a horror lover, or some kind of referential horror thing. Everything has a deeper layer of meaning to it. It's very, very character driven. And there's so much about just being the eldest daughter. Okay, the plight of the eldest daughter. I don't know how a man, Grady Hendrix, captured it so well, but this was my experience. It's like this man was literally living in my head and pulled out my experience and put it on the page. The horror is great. The character development is great. The family dynamics are great. The commentary is great. The trippiness, the pacing, like everything about it appealed to me. That's why it was my best book of the year, and this is essential reading for me. I feel like a Grady Hendrix book had to be in the essential horror reading because he's kind of like, dare I say, a modern classic, at least to me. So gotta love them. Next up, we have Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This is another ghosty-ish book. It's more like possession horror, okay? We are following a woman who is in the late 90s, early 2000s, just kind of like adjusting to life. Again, this is one that is very character-driven. We follow a woman as she's dealing with considering the fact that she might be possessed by a demon. We follow her from the first moment that she notices it all the way through when shit hits the fan, how it takes over her personality, and what this demon might be trying to tell her, because it is there for a reason. There's so much commentary in this book. I feel like I've said the word commentary a million fucking times in this video, but that's because I love a horror book with something to say, okay? This is not just cheap thrills and jump scares. This is the real shit in the world that is actually deeply horrifying through the lens of a horror metaphor, which is so classic to the genre. Possession, I mean, you think of something like The Exorcist, like that is essential horror, and I feel like Sarah Gran just took that concept and brought it into womanhood, into this place where the commentary is needed. The story is so immersive. The way that it's written is just absolutely enrapturing. You feel like you're there. You feel like you're being possessed along with the main character. I cannot recommend it highly enough. This is one that I want to reread forever and ever and ever. And I think that if I was trapped with this book on the deserted island, it doesn't matter how many times I read it, I would discover something new on every read. And the last book I have to talk about today to round out my top 10 horror books you need to read before you die. This one is very, very, very special to me, very close to my heart, and that is Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. I actually got the amazing chance to talk with Rachel Harrison about this book and the meaning behind it, and we literally fucking cried about it together. I love her so much. I'm obsessed with her. This is another one that I have signed. You know, I don't care about my books, okay? My physical books, I literally don't care about them. I will dog ear them. I will rip pages out of them if I don't like something on the page. I am like very expressive because I don't care about physical objects, okay? You could literally throw me on the street tomorrow and I would survive just fine. But you know, if I deeply care about a physical object, like if I actually care about a physical copy of a book and the quality of it and the fact that there's a signature on this page, like that's how you know that I'm really deeply affected by something. That is this book. I will never forget talking to Rachel Harrison about this book. I literally walked up to her with tears in my eyes and I literally said, "Such sharp teeth." And she instantly just said, "Come here." And she just hugged me. We communicated so much woman to woman through just the narrative of this book. I could literally cry talking about it now. It is, to really simplify it, a werewolf story. Okay? This is a story about a woman who suspects she's turning into a werewolf when she returns home to her hometown to help out her sister who is pregnant. It's so much more than that though. Okay, it's again character driven. It's again rife with commentary about misogyny and the woman's experience in the world, all the shit that I love. But it does it in a way with this metaphor that so much is being said without directly saying it. And it's also that the horror metaphor itself is scary, really, like the idea of like losing control of your body, losing control of your relationships, your friendships. There's a lot of commentary in here about female friendships, about sexual assault, so many things that every woman I know, including myself, deals with as you are growing up and developing as a person. This book just touches on in the most horrifyingly beautiful way. And I cannot recommend it enough. I know that 90% of my audience is female. I am talking to you now watching this. If you can handle it, please read this book. Please. I will beg. I'm not above begging. I'll get on my knees and literally beg you, please read this book. And with that very dramatic end, those are my top 10 horror books I think you should read before you die. I would take them to my deserted island. You will never catch me unhauling them. I am obsessed. Essential horror reading here, y'all. And again, if you want 3 more recommendations for essential horror reads, you can see the extended cut of this video on Patreon. But even if you're just over here, thank you so much for watching this video today. If you liked it, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!